Hey everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. I wanted to just turn the camera on and talk about sensorimotor OCD, also known as somatic OCD, also known as hyper-awareness. Now, as many people know who have watched my videos, I had a very long, sometimes agonizing journey with sensorimotor OCD, specifically around my saliva and my swallowing sensations, but I've also had breathing hyper-awareness, blinking hyper-awareness, just heart palpitation, hyper-awareness of my thumbs, my clothing, just basically like where my hands were in space. So I had all these different types of hyper-awarenesses. And I think sensation-based fears can be tricky, not any more difficult to recover from. Every single fear needs some type of tweak to them when it comes to the recovery process. When we talk about contamination OCD tends to need a lot more outward exposures, whereas sensorimotor / hyper-awareness based fears really don't. And it really comes down to breaking down the fear with disputing and the fear of fear, also known as conditional life acceptance. So before I go any further, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe. We have lots of great content coming up on 1,000 videos. Sensorimotor is something I really enjoy talking about because it really hits home with me because of how it kind of in a perceived way, put my life on hold for a while because I really did not think I could ever get better from it. I really thought that my life was going to be consumed by my sensations for the rest of my life. And it wasn't that even if my sensations did consume me for the rest of my life, it was the belief that if they did consume me for the rest of my life, that my life would be horrible, it wouldn't be worth living, and it would be terrible. And I'm going to explain how I broke that down with gratitude, disputing, and all that. But let's kind of go back to the beginning of my life. I was an odd child, to say the least. I was a pathological liar for the majority of my life. I'm pretty sure I lied because I didn't like the way I felt. I think many OCD and anxiety sufferers can relate to this. I would lie because I didn't like the way I felt, so I would lie, and lying would be almost that compulsive release. I didn't wear, many people always joke, they ask me, is that true? And it is true. My wife even noticed it for a while before we were married. I didn't wear underwear for a year. I wouldn't wear certain clothes if they were too tight. I'd always would become hyper aware of certain sensations on my body because I believed that noticing those sensations was absolutely terrible. And if I noticed them, that it was just too much, right? Like I'd be in grad school and I wouldn't wear certain things because subconsciously the belief was I don't want to have to know this sensation when I'm trying to focus on learning in school, and all of that fear of fear. All of my journey, primarily, everything comes down to fear of fear. There's other things as well, conditional self-acceptance with my body dysmorphia stuff, and the fear of not accepting myself, the fear of being fat, or the fear of not having muscle, a combination of both. So when I would try to prove that to myself, it would just swing like, oh, you're too skinny or you're too fat. And I could never outsmart it, which I think many of us try to outsmart fear of fear, outsmart conditional self-acceptance. And it's just, you just get hit in the head with a door. It just doesn't work like that, right? And we know that. So the fear of fear has always been prevalent in my life when it comes to not wanting to feel certain sensations. And this goes way beyond things I've ever even talked about on videos. I lived on the water, so wearing jet ski harnesses, I'd have to wear them a certain way. Cocoa butter, the cocoa butter bottles, I would apply like one of those every other week because I was constantly trying to feel a certain sensation on my body. I wanted to feel a certain way. And all those other things that I was doing, not knowing that those were all leading up to me being chronically stuck with sensorimotor. Like I didn't like touching styrofoam because I thought that sensation weirded me out. I only really liked showering and taking baths in certain ways because of the sensations. So it goes way beyond my saliva and swallowing and hyper-awarenesses. Now, when I first became latched with sensorimotor OCD, my entire life seemed, my perception of my life, which I thought I had everything going for me. I had this wonderful fiance. I had a great family. I was in a good spot after my father died. It wasn't really bothering me anymore. I had just accepted that death is a part of life. And all these things, I'm about to graduate grad school, and then just my life came crashing down literally in a matter of a day. I was really anxious up to that point. I had just recovered from suffering with tinnitus for 3 months, which definitely now when I look back to it, it was sensorimotor OCD in its own way. I was checking all my sensorimotors, all my tinnitus fears. I stopped driving with the windows down. I stopped using headphones. I stopped using forks and knives. I stopped doing anything that would perpetuate the fear of me noticing my tinnitus or it getting worse forever. And that, I think, is the beginning factor of what played into my sensorimotor. Because right when I believed I had recovered from tinnitus, that's when my sensorimotor OCD kind of just exploded. It started with blinking, then it went to swallowing, and then it went to saliva and kind of would like switch around. The thumb ones were odd. Those would come and go for a while. I would just become like very hyper aware of my thumbs as if there was lead in them or like a heavy liquid. I would be very hyper aware of like my clothing, like where my arms were. Like I'd always be like moving these around. My belt line was a big one. Because that was tied into my body dysmorphia. I didn't like the way my stomach felt no matter what. It didn't matter how lean I was. It didn't matter if I was 6% body fat. None of that mattered because I never accepted myself. So if you're trying to prove to yourself real quick, by trying to get in shape to prove your worth, I know there's a lot of content, and I mean a lot, millions of pieces of content about building your self-image by getting in shape. It's nonsense. I can tell you from extreme experience that is not how you actually build confidence. Confidence comes from, it's not in the way that people think. Confidence comes from accepting yourself for who you are, having goals, but you don't need to reach those goals, and you don't have to be too strict about those goals. I was watching something the other day about one of these long hyper marathons, 100 miles, and the person was saying how everything in their life has to go on the back burner. I don't think that's healthy. I'll debate that till the cows come home. I don't think that most professional athletes have a good balance on their lives. And I can say this confidently because we see what happens when they retire. They get really overweight. They get depressed. Some of them take their own lives. They have all sorts of domestic problems. So it's you building up the way you look has benefits. It's great to be like physically attractive. It's great but it's not as important as we think. And it doesn't build confidence like people think because it's a constant pendulum that you need to constantly fill. So it's like you see people that are jacked and you're like, wow, you look like a Greek statue. But then when you look at them, they're always still really insecure. Why is that? It's because they have a false ideology about their belief systems. It's because they've never been shown the way. Just like I was never shown the way. And I can't show everyone, which is unfortunate, and it makes me upset. But I can't do that. I can only help myself and provide information. I'll do a whole separate video on that because I get asked about my body dysmorphia all the time. So back to sensorimotor. When I had left the mental hospital, I had a lot of avoidance behaviors. A lot. Let me finish the rest of this lovely shake. Looks a little sketchy. Honey, fruit, and protein powder. And it gets stuck in my beard, and my wife yells at me. She's like, "You're disgusting." I'm like, "I know." So basically, I spent a lot of time trying to rid myself of my saliva and swallowing sensations all day. Chewing on ice cubes, chewing on bottle caps, leaving work early, playing video games 90 hours a week, not walking my dogs, eating out every meal, gaining 45 pounds, not going to the gym. Everything I could, my entire life was a compulsion. Everything. And I was still chronically, compulsively lying. I still was compulsively engaging in other addictive behaviors I had because they were all short-term gratifying things. There's nothing inherently wrong with instant gratification per se. A lot of people say instant gratification is always bad. I don't agree with that. I think that instant gratification can have benefits to perpetuate you to move in the right direction. But too much instant gratification tends to be problematic. So I had to realize that I'm going to salivate and swallow for the rest of my life. Forever. I'm going to blink forever. I'm going to breathe forever. My heart's going to beat forever. Those aren't going to go. So why would I need to expose myself to those? It doesn't make a lot of sense. They're going to be there forever. Right? It's not like a contamination fear where I could just avoid a door handle. I got to touch that door handle and then work on my belief system. So after a long time of stubbornness, Rob finally got through to me, finally, because he could only suggest, and I had to come to the realization myself that the reason why I was stuck was because of the fear of noticing my sensations for the rest of my life. I believe that if I noticed these sensations for the rest of my life, that my life was ruined. That if I noticed my saliva and my swallowing at any place I didn't want it to, then my life was ruined. That if I even had a slight hyper-awareness that I wasn't recovered, that even if I had a slight amount of anxiety, my life was hindered in many ways. And this is where fear really got me when I recovered from sensorimotor OCD. Once I recovered from sensorimotor OCD, everything just kind of morphed. It was like a balloon that was like filling and just popped, and like pieces went all over the place. I developed really bad GAD. My body dysmorphia went haywire. And I'll do another video on morphing themes because it's something we get asked about a lot. And it was something that I arrogantly, naively, and moronically didn't think would happen to me, but I was completely wrong. And it did happen to me. And it's okay because it's another lesson to learn from. One of my favorite quotes from Kirsty is this: when you develop a new theme, one of the best things you could do for a while is sit with it and then work on it and realize that it's okay to have a new theme. It's not fun, but it can show you something new about yourself. And I think that's really key. So always remember with sensorimotor OCD, you can expose yourself to your sensations. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I didn't do it. I don't recommend it because it usually becomes a chase to self-reassure. It's okay to breathe. Everyone breathes. It's okay to salivate. Everyone salivates. You're right. Everyone breathes. Everyone salivates. Everyone swallows. Everyone's eyes blink. And in their heartbeat. But that's not why you're stuck. You're stuck because you're afraid you're going to notice this for the rest of your life. So breaking that down is critical with the first book on the reading list, page 96 and 97, the dib sheet. So real quick before we end the video, activating event, sensorimotor, sensation-based fears, your belief systems, I must not notice this, awfulizing, this is awful, terrible, horrible, frustration tolerance, I can't stand noticing this, my life is not worth living, and then that equals the consequence, which was panic, anxiety, depression, and now the avoidance behaviors such as anger outbursts, addictive behaviors, avoidances. Now I went back and disputed, which you have your disputing column. Where is holding this belief getting me? It's getting me nowhere. It's getting me absolutely nowhere. Where is the evidence to support my irrational belief? Is it really awful? Well, it can't really be awful because there's things out there that are much worse. Physical pain, genocides, tyrants, starvations, all sorts of stuff. It's frustrating, but it's not horrible. Can I really not stand it? Of course I can stand it because I'm here. And this leads over to your new effective new philosophy, right? I would prefer not to be stuck with OCD, but even if I am, it's not the end of the world. It may be bad or unfortunate, but it's not awful. Frustration tolerance, I don't like it, but I can stand it. All of this stuff is so key. I'm telling you, I know we talk about it a lot. I know it's redundant and I know it can sound boring, but we do talk about this book so much because it has so much applicability to our recovery journeys. You can find these books at ocdrecovery.com underneath the resource tab. Read them in order, go through. I like to read the book through one time and then go through and do the exercises afterwards. And these are tools for life. This goes way beyond OCD. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about sensorimotor and my journey, please comment down below. We have a lot of great webinars coming up. If you're interested in our webinars or coaching services, please email info@ocdrecovery.com. You could ask for people to work with and all sorts of stuff like that. We have a great community. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.